on the importance of that center. We're now joined by former IEC Deputy Chairperson and Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. That's Mr. Terry Tselane. Evening to you, Mr. Tselane. Thanks very much for your time, even with his hangover from what happened to him and his party the last time, as far as the IEC was concerned. Herman Mashaba is quite happy with the show that the IEC put out today. Were you?
Absolutely, and thank you very much for having me here. I think one thing that is very impressive about South Africa is the maturity of the political leadership. I think all the political parties and their leaders are aware of what is at stake, and then all of them will actually be pulling together to make sure that we can have free and fair elections. The issue of creation of environment for free and fair election is not only the responsibility of the Commission, but it's a joint responsibility between the Commission, political parties, supporters, and the civil society. And then I'm glad that thus far it appears that all the political parties are really united in terms of creation of this environment for free and fair elections. And I think it might not even be necessary for the intervention of the security forces in terms of these elections because of that maturity of the leadership of South Africa.
And I want us to get into that in a bit, but staying just with Commission matters a little. And I was listening to the speeches here from Commissioner Pillay, who was first to speak, all the way to the very last commissioner to speak, including, of course, the Chief Electoral Officer and the Chairperson of the Commission. Some interesting speeches, I would dare say, cheeky even in parts. The IEC clearly believing that it has a good story to tell. It has a lot to be proud of so far.
I think they've done a fantastic job thus far, particularly in relation to international or those who are in diaspora in terms of voting. We have not had any complaint from any of the countries that participated in this process. And I think that is an important dry run for the elections. So once you've gone through that particular hurdle, then you should be ready for a bigger challenge, which is now the 29th of May, which is going to be now ensuring that you get as many people as possible and you've got the infrastructure that can actually withstand the kind of the challenges and pressures that it will be exerted on the Commission.
Would that be the biggest moment? In other words, between now and Wednesday, the next big moment is ensuring that on Wednesday, those polling stations opened on time, stuff is there, everything works.
Absolutely. The logistics of the elections are important. It's important for the Commission to make sure that they've got sufficient material at the right time, the right places, and make sure that there is nothing untoward that is actually happening there. And then hopefully also they've actually trained their staff to be able to manage this process with impartiality. And if they can be able to get this thing right, I don't think there should actually be any serious challenges and difficulties in terms of the management of this process.
You've been fortunate enough to have been there and having to, take responsibility for what happens between now and the day of the elections. Over the next 6 or so days, what then do the commissioners and, of course, the senior management of the commission preoccupy themselves with? What happens behind the scenes?
Cleaning up the logistics, the arrangements, making sure that they've got sufficient resources in terms of staff, that they've got all the people that are supposed to be in their voting stations, that all their staff, it's, they are well prepared for the elections, but also in terms of the logistics, in terms of the materials, whether you're talking about security materials or normal materials that are supposed to be used for the elections, the ballot papers, the ballot boxes. Do you have them in sufficient numbers? Where are they located? Are they moving now from the warehouses going to the voting stations? How are they going to be managing all that process? And then making sure that basically nothing untoward is going to be happening in terms of the transmission of information from the warehouses to the voting station, and then making sure that on the day of the elections, the transmission of the results now from the voting station to the municipal offices, from municipal offices to the National Result Centre, that there is nothing untoward that is actually happening and everything is in order.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said earlier that, guaranteeing a free and fair election is as much the responsibility of the IEC as it is the responsibility of other players, including, or in the main, political parties. And earlier today, Commissioner Pillay mentioning the fact that, there have been 17 court cases, and so far the IEC has won 14 of those. There's a couple of outstanding that are still with the courts. Just your thoughts on that.
Well, the beauty about the South African situation is that in the event that you've got a petition, there are various processes that you've got to go through. Firstly, you go through the commission. The commission deals with objections. When a person is disaggrieved by the decision of the commission, they can go to the electoral court. If they are not happy with the decision of the electoral court, they can go to the constitutional court. So there are mechanisms that have been put in place to be able to deal with those issues. But in addition to that, you also have got a process of dealing with issues and conflict between the political parties through conciliation. Section 103 of the Electoral Act does provide the Commission with the powers to deal with the issues through conciliation between the political parties. So, all these mechanisms are important in terms of ensuring that you've got free and fair elections. So, the fact that there have been court challenges and all this, it is part of the process. It is part of making sure that when people are not happy with the process, they don't go to the streets, but they use avenues that are available to deal with those issues that they are disaggrieved with.
And the fact that there have been so many cases doesn't, for you, raise any eyebrows?
No, it doesn't. All it does, it shows the maturity of a situation and the fact that there are pressures. More than any other elections, there are pressures on the Commission, there are pressures from elsewhere, and then it is expected, particularly because if you look at the performance of the political parties in the past few elections, you're beginning to realize that there is no single dominant political party, and therefore everybody would like to influence the Commission. They would want to put pressure on the Commission to do things in a particular way because they would want also to get some votes. So if by going to the courts means that they will be able to deal with the issues that they are not happy about, and then that will actually advantage them in terms of the process, of course they've got to take that advantage of that platform and not go to the streets. So that's a beauty about our system.
Of course, speaking of political parties still out to win votes, going into the weekend, there'll be all these big Siyanqoba rallies that are both a show of force, but also a last push on the part of, political parties and candidates as they seek to convince, whoever they can still convince at this particular point. And part of the reason I'm raising this question is because I watched a video yesterday of the ANC deputy president, speaking outside during a rally where he felt that the political parties are still allowed to canvass or campaign all the way to election day. Before you answer, just take a listen, and a look at what he just he said yesterday.
Siyanqoba means we are winning. We are definitely going to win on the 29th of May. But what we're going to do after Siyanqoba, the IEC has allowed parties to campaign right up to the end. The only thing they said, we mustn't campaign at voting stations. If we allow tailing, we must not allow tail at voting stations. But in the townships, in the streets, we can continue to campaign even on Sunday, Monday. We can loud tail, but not close to voting stations. And obviously, those who are party agents, they have to abide by the rules in the voting stations. We will have our marquees outside the voting stations, but we assure the IEC that they won't hear us making noise outside voting stations. But
is it accurate?
Well, I think there could be just like a slight emphasis in terms of the issues. If you look at Section 108 of the Electoral Act, basically it says that no political meetings, marches, and protests can take place on the day of the elections. And then the same section will also say that no political activity is allowed within a voting station. So what traditionally the Commission has done is to allow the political parties to have their desks and you know, to be able to assist in the process of making sure that, you know, voters do come to the voting stations, and then they check their details where those political parties have actually, you know, put their desks. And it's a matter that has actually been agreed to over the years between the political parties and the IEC. So political activity is not allowed on the day of the elections. Political activity ends, or political marches, meetings, and protests, they end 12 o'clock midnight before the day of the elections. And then all other political activities that are allowed are those that I've actually referred to. So it is possible that the Deputy President may have been referring to the fact that they are allowed to have the desks where they can, you know, people can come and check their details, but also to try to mobilize people to go to the voting station. But other than that, as I've indicated, Section 108 of the Electoral Act does prohibit political meetings, protests, and marches on the day of the elections. And
there is no 48-hour cooling period, as some people have further suggested?
No 48 hours. As I've indicated, it is midnight, 12 o'clock, you know, a day before the elections.
Tselane, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.